The ransom note found in the Ramsey house was unlike anything FBI experts had seen before. 2.5 pages long, written with materials from inside the home, demanding exactly $118,000. The precise amount of John Ramsey's recent Christmas bonus. But JonBenét's body was found in the basement 8 hours later. No kidnapper had taken her anywhere. The note made no sense, unless it was never meant to cover up a kidnapping. 28 years later, investigators believe the longest ransom note in FBI history was written to hide something far more sinister than abduction. If you're fascinated by cases where critical mistakes changed everything, make sure to subscribe because this story reveals how one morning's decisions can haunt an investigation for decades. Detective Linda Arndt had worked kidnapping cases before. When her pager buzzed at 6:10 a.m. on December 26th, Christmas morning, she knew the drill. A missing child meant time was everything. Every minute counted when dealing with potential abductors. The address was 755 15th Street in Boulder, an upscale neighborhood where serious crimes rarely happened. Arndt grabbed her badge and gun, mentally preparing for what she assumed would be a straightforward kidnapping investigation. The house was impressive, a Tudor-style mansion worth well over $500,000. John and Patsy Ramsey were clearly wealthy, which explained why someone might target their family for ransom. Patsy met her at the door, hysterical and clutching a piece of paper. The ransom note was immediately unusual. Most kidnapping notes were brief, demanding money and threatening consequences. This one was different. Arndt read the lengthy document with growing confusion. The handwriting was neat, almost practiced. The language was dramatic, filled with movie references and unnecessary details. Most strange was the specific demand, $118,000, an oddly precise amount for a random kidnapping. But protocol was protocol. Arndt began treating the scene as a kidnapping case. She advised the family not to call additional people, to preserve potential evidence, to wait for FBI assistance. Standard procedure for protecting a crime scene. John Ramsey seemed cooperative but distant. His behavior struck Arndt as unusual, less panicked than she expected from a father whose daughter had been taken. But people reacted to trauma differently. She had learned not to judge reactions in the first hours of crisis. The house felt wrong somehow. Too quiet for a family in crisis. Too clean for a home that had been burglarized. Arndt began to suspect this wasn't a typical kidnapping, but she followed department protocol anyway. By 8 a.m. The Ramsey house had transformed into something Arndt had never experienced. Instead of a controlled crime scene, it became a gathering place for friends and family offering support. Fleet and Priscilla White arrived first, followed by the Fernies, then a parade of neighbors and church friends. Each person who entered contaminated potential evidence. Each conversation could be overheard by others. Each movement through the house disturbed the scene. Arndt watched helplessly as her crime scene dissolved into chaos. She was alone, waiting for backup that seemed slow to arrive, trying to manage an impossible situation. Department protocol said to secure the scene. But how could she turn away people offering comfort to a traumatized family? The friends meant well. They cleaned dishes, answered phones, tried to provide normalcy in an abnormal situation. But every helpful gesture potentially destroyed evidence. Fingerprints were wiped away. Trace evidence was swept up. The house was returning to order just when investigators needed to see the chaos. By 10 a.m., Arndt realized she was losing control. The FBI agents hadn't arrived yet. Her supervisor hadn't sent additional officers. She was managing a potential kidnapping with no backup and an increasingly contaminated crime scene. John Ramsey seemed restless. He disappeared for periods, sometimes alone, sometimes with Fleet White. They were searching the house, they said, looking for clues about how someone might have entered undetected. Arndt should have conducted those searches herself. Standard protocol required law enforcement to control all evidence gathering. But she was overwhelmed, managing too many people in too large a space with too little support. The phone calls added another layer of complexity. The ransom note said the kidnappers would call between 8 and 10 a.m. When 10 a.m. passed with no contact, everyone grew more anxious. Kidnappings without communication usually meant the worst. If you're finding the story as disturbing as Detective Arndt did that morning, don't forget to subscribe for more cases where everything that could go wrong did go wrong. By noon, Arndt knew this wasn't a kidnapping. Kidnappers didn't write epic ransom notes and then disappear. They didn't demand oddly specific amounts and then fail to call. Something else had happened in the Ramsey house, something the note was designed to hide. But the investigation was already compromised beyond repair. The crime scene had been trampled by a dozen people. Evidence had been cleaned, moved, or destroyed. Whatever had really happened to JonBenét was now buried under layers of contamination and confusion. At T1:05 p.m., John Ramsey's scream shattered what remained of Detective Arndt's composure. He had found something in the basement, something that confirmed her growing fears about this case. JonBenét's body was in a windowless storage room, covered with a white blanket. She had been sexually assaulted and murdered, probably hours before the ransom note was written. This was never kidnapping. It was a murder staged to look like something else. But John's scream created another critical error. In his shock and grief, he picked up his daughter's body and carried her upstairs. The natural instinct of a father, but a catastrophic mistake for the investigation. Arndt watched in horror as the last pristine piece of evidence was compromised. JonBenét's body, the crime scene in the basement, the positioning of evidence, all of it was now contaminated beyond forensic recovery. She was alone in the house with a dead child and a father who had just destroyed crucial evidence. The other officers still hadn't arrived. The FBI was finally en route, but too late to salvage the investigation. The basement storage room told a story that investigators would spend decades trying to reconstruct. JonBenét had been killed in or near that room, then covered and left there while someone upstairs wrote the elaborate ransom note. But the story was now incomplete. John's understandable reaction to finding his daughter had eliminated crucial details about how she had been positioned, what evidence might have been near her body, how the killer had left the scene. Arndt knew her career was effectively over. She had presided over one of the most bungled crime scene investigations in recent memory, not through malice or incompetence, but through a series of understandable decisions that collectively destroyed the case. The media would later blame her for allowing contamination. The department would question her judgment. The public would demand accountability. But in that moment, watching John Ramsey hold his dead daughter, Arndt understood that she had been set up to fail from the beginning. One detective, one crime scene, multiple potential suspects who were also grieving family members. No backup, no clear protocols for managing such an unusual situation. The investigation was doomed before it truly began. Detective Linda Arndt never worked another high-profile case. The JonBenét investigation haunted her career and personal life for years. She eventually left law enforcement, unable to escape the criticism and second-guessing that followed December 26, 1996. The contaminated crime scene made the case nearly impossible to solve. Physical evidence was compromised. Witness statements were unreliable. The investigation became a media circus that prioritized speculation over facts. For 28 years, the Ramsey family lived under suspicion. Public opinion, influenced by bungled early reporting, assumed parents were involved. John and Patsy Ramsey faced accusations, lawsuits, and death threats while maintaining their innocence. Advanced DNA testing eventually vindicated the family. Touch DNA evidence from JonBenét's clothing revealed genetic material from an unknown male, someone who had never been identified or charged. The intruder theory that seemed unlikely in 1996 became the most probable explanation by 2008. But the DNA vindication came too late for Patsy Ramsey, who died in 2006 still under a cloud of public suspicion. She never lived to see her family cleared by the science that wasn't available during the original investigation. The case remains officially unsolved. The Boulder Police Department continues investigating, following leads and testing evidence with modern techniques. But the critical first hours of the investigation can never be recovered or redone. Modern crime scene protocols have been transformed by lessons learned from the JonBenét case. Police departments now have stricter rules about scene contamination, family management during investigations, and media relations in high-profile cases. The Ramsey house has changed hands multiple times, but its notoriety remains. The basement room, where JonBenét was found, has been renovated beyond recognition. The house that was once a family home became a symbol of everything that can go wrong in a criminal investigation. Detective Arndt's experience became a cautionary tale taught in police academies across America. Her situation, managing an unprecedented case with inadequate resources, highlighted systemic problems in how law enforcement handles complex investigations. The ransom note remains one of the most analyzed documents in criminal history. Handwriting experts, linguists, and forensic psychologists have studied every word, every pen stroke, every spacing decision. The note was almost certainly written by JonBenét's killer, but its author has never been identified. The length and content of the note suggest someone comfortable in the Ramsey house, someone with time to write and rewrite, someone familiar with the family's financial details. But those clues, obvious in hindsight, were obscured by the chaos of that first morning. The investigation's failures also revealed how unprepared law enforcement was for the modern media landscape. The JonBenét case became the first true crime media circus of the internet age, where speculation and conspiracy theories spread faster than facts. Boulder police received criticism for their handling of the case, but they were navigating uncharted territory. A wealthy family, a child beauty queen, a bizarre ransom note, and constant media pressure created a perfect storm for investigative mistakes. The case changed how America thinks about child safety, criminal investigation, and media responsibility. JonBenét's murder occurred in what seemed like the safest possible environment, a locked house in an upscale neighborhood on Christmas night. John Ramsey continues advocating for justice in his daughter's case. Now, in his 80s, he maintains hope that advancing forensic technology will eventually identify JonBenét's killer. The family's vindication through DNA testing proved that perseverance and scientific progress can overcome even the most contaminated investigations. If you're captivated by stories where systemic failures create lasting consequences, make sure you're subscribed for more cases where small mistakes led to decades of injustice. The JonBenét Ramsey case serves as a reminder that even well-intentioned people can make decisions that compromise justice. Detective Arndt was trying to balance compassion with procedure, family needs with investigative requirements, human nature with police protocol. Her experience illustrates how individual officers can be overwhelmed by circumstances beyond their control. The case wasn't bungled by malice or incompetence, but by a series of understandable reactions to an impossible situation. 28 years later, the questions that should have been answered in the first hours remain unanswered. But the lessons learned from those failures have improved investigations across America, ensuring that future families might receive the justice that has long eluded the Ramseys.